The first thing the audience noticed was the letter C. 3 million people were watching Chloe Vale sign copies of a book she had not written. The launch stage glowed white and gold. The cameras moved across rows of journalists, critics, influencers, and readers who had waited months for the sequel to the best-selling memoir that had turned my older sister into the most famous survivor author in the country. Behind her, the giant screen displayed the cover, the Rissing from Haspers by Schlohel. My name was nowhere. It never had been. Chloe smiled at the interviewer. Writing this second book took everything out of me. She had practiced that line. I knew because I had heard her practice it in the basement 2 nights earlier, while she stood upstairs beside the vent and complained that the sentence sounded too humble. Julian stood at the side of the stage in a dark suit. My former fiancé. Her current manager. He watched the cameras instead of Chloe. That was Julian. Even love was a business angle. The interviewer leaned forward. The first book changed millions of lives. Did you ever feel pressure writing the sequel? Chloe laughed softly. Of course, lie. Lie had to be honest. Lie. Pain only matters if you turn it into something meaningful. That one almost made me laugh. Down beneath my parents' house, pain had been turned into pages. I sat on a narrow mattress beside a radiator. A cuff around my ankle attached me to a short steel chain. My wrists were no longer in heavy casts, but both hands were wrapped in rigid braces. 3 surgeries had kept them functional enough to move. Not enough to type properly. Not yet. A small camera in the basement ceiling pointed toward me. My parents thought it was theirs. For months they had used it to monitor whether I was working. Now a court-authorized digital forensics team was preserving the feed. Police were 5 minutes away. The publisher's legal counsel was backstage. And the person my family thought was an anonymous hacker named Cypher was actually a cybersecurity investigator named Adrian Cross working with my attorney in law enforcement. No one was breaking into anything. No one needed to. My family had already created all the evidence themselves. The stage interviewer smiled. Would you read the opening passage? Chloe lifted the book. Gladly. That was the signal. The giant screen behind her went black. She stopped. A murmur moved through the room. Julian turned toward the control booth. What happened? Then the cover disappeared. Page 1 appeared, the first letter enlarged in red. C. The page flipped. H. Then LOE. Chloe's smile faded. The crowd went quiet. The pages continued. ISAFRA-LUD. Louis' face went white. He took 1 step toward the AV desk. Security stopped him. Not because I owned them, because the Publishers' Council had already instructed venue security to preserve the presentation once the authenticated evidence package began. The letters kept moving. IAMHELDHOS OSTAGE. Someone in the audience gasped. Chloe dropped the book. No, the screen split. On the left, the acrostic pattern remained. On the right, a live image appeared. Me, pale, thin, sitting beside a radiator. Me, pale, sitting beside a radiator. Hands in braces. Chain visible at my ankle. 3 million viewers saw me at once. The live comments stopped so abruptly, the silence felt physical. Then they exploded. WHO is that? Call the police. Oh, my God, this that, Mayor. The microphone on stage carried Chloe's breathing. Julian stared at the screen. He knew. Of course he knew. My voice came through the venue speakers. Not live. A recording my attorney had approved. My name is Maya Hale. Chloe covered her mouth. I wrote both books. The audience turned toward her. I had been held in my parents' basement while my sister published my work under her name. A second clip played. My mother's voice. Clear. Recorded on the same voice recorder they used for dictation. Keep talking. The publisher wants another chapter by Friday. My father's voice. Don't make us come downstairs again. Then Julian. Calm. Once the sequel sells, transfer the royalties into the management account. The room erupted. Chloe screamed, turn it off. Nobody did. I looked directly at the basement camera and smiled. Not because I had won, not yet, because I heard something upstairs. A crash, then voices. Police, my parents shouted. The basement door opened. Light flooded the stairs. I closed my eyes. For 3 years I had believed my words would save me. They hadn't. People did. Evidence did. And finally, the door opened from the outside. 3 years earlier, I thought my biggest problem was that no publisher would ever read my book. I had written it in secret, not because my family hated books. They loved successful books. They hated mine before it made money. The manuscript began as therapy. I was 23 when I started. I had survived a childhood that looked normal from the street. Nice house, good schools, family photographs. Inside, everything revolved around Chloe. She was 2 years older, beautiful, confident, the kind of child adults described as special. Before she had done anything, I was useful. I did homework quietly, helped Mum, fixed Dad's invoices, drove Grandma to appointments before she died. When Chloe wanted acting lessons, my parents found money. When I wanted a writing course, Dad said, "You can learn from books." So I did. I learned structure, voice, memory, how one small detail could carry an entire scene. The memoir started with one sentence. My family never hit me until the day money finally made me worth touching. I did not know how literal that sentence would become. For 3 years I wrote at night. I changed names, rebuilt scenes. The recent checked memory against journals I had kept since 14. The book was not a revenge document that mattered. It was about growing up as the invisible daughter in a house built around performance, about Chloe, my parents, about how love gets distorted when one child is treated like proof of success and the other like equipment. I called it The Quiet Room. Julian was the first person I let read it. We had been engaged 6 months. He worked in media rights and talent management. He said he loved that I was serious. I believed him. He read the manuscript over one weekend, then came to my apartment carrying coffee and an expression I had never seen. "Maya, what? This is good." I laughed. "You sound surprised." "I am. Thanks." "No, I mean." He sat. "This is very good." I stared. "How good?" He looked at the pages. 7 figures if the right editor sees it. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He asked if he could send it to an agent. I hesitated, then said yes. That decision began everything. Within 6 weeks, 3 publishers were bidding. The final offer was larger than my parents' house. My mother cried when I told her, not from pride, from math. "How much after taxes?" I laughed awkwardly. "Mom, I'm just asking." Dad asked about film rights. Chloe asked whether there was a role for her if it became a series. Nobody asked what it meant to me. That should have warned me. The deal required final revisions and a confidentiality period before announcement. I kept the manuscript on my laptop and backed it up to encrypted cloud storage managed by the publisher. I also had my original handwritten journals, hundreds of pages, dates, scenes, raw fragments, proof of authorship without realizing I would need proof. Chloe had been struggling. Her acting career had gone nowhere. Small roles, commercials. One streaming show cancels after 4 episodes. She came over one night drinking wine. "You always had it easier." I stared. "Easier? People take you seriously because I work." She rolled her eyes. "You don't understand." "What?" "Being looked at all the time." I almost laughed. Chloe had spent her life demanding attention, then blaming attention for hurting. I said, "You can do something else." She stared like I'd insulted her. "I am not quitting." "I didn't say quit. You implied it." "No." She finished the wine, then asked, "What if I helped with the book?" I looked at her. "How?" "Publicity. The publisher has publicity." "I'm your sister." That sentence had always been a key in our family. "I'm your sister." He's your father, she's your mother. Family language is access. I said, "I'll think about it." I never got the chance. 3 nights later, my mother invited Julian and me to dinner. Chloe was there. Dad opened expensive wine. He toasted the book. To Maya. Everyone lifted a glass. I smiled. I drank. 20 minutes later, the room softened. Not spinning. Heavy. Julian's face blurred. I remember saying, "Something's wrong." My mother stood. Chloe took my glass. Dad caught me when I slid from the chair. Julian did not move. That was the last thing I saw. My fiancé sitting at the table while my father carried me away. I woke on concrete. My head hurt, but my mouth tasted bitter. One ankle was cuffed to a radiator pipe. The basement was cold. I sat up too quickly. The chain pulled. "What?" My voice echoed. Soundproof walls. Old home theatre room. We had used it years earlier for storage. Now there was a mattress. A portable toilet, a table, a camera. My laptop was gone, my phone gone. I shouted. Nothing. Then a television mounted on the wall turned on. Chloe appeared. Lit morning show. She sat on a sofa wearing cream. The host held my book. Except the cover said, "The Q Hit Room by Schlohegel Hell." I stopped breathing. The host smiled. "This is extraordinary." Chloe touched her chest. "Thank you. You've written so openly about family trauma." Beautiful tears filled her eyes. I had to. I pulled against the chain. No. The host continued, "Your publisher says the book could become one of the biggest memoirs of the year." No. Chloe nodded. "I just hope it helps people feel less alone." I screamed at the screen. No one heard. The basement door opened. My parents came down. Mom carried a tray. Dad carried documents. I stood. "What did you do?" My father looked at the television. "Sit. That is my book. Lower your voice. Let me out. Let me out." Mom put the tray down. "Maya, please, please." I pulled the chain. Metal struck the radiator. "You drugged me. We needed time." "For what?" Dad held up the documents. "Transfer arrangements." I stared. "What? The rights are under Chloe's name." "No. Julian handled it." My stomach dropped. "Julian?" Mom looked almost embarrassed. Plummetist. "Habishing." "Where is he?" Silence. I looked at the television. Chloe. "Then Dad? Then Mom? Where is Julian?" My father smiled. "Working." "Two weeks Julian." My father smiled. "Working." 2 weeks later, I saw him. On television, standing beside Chloe at a book event. Her manager, my fiancé, on my feet. He put one hand on her back. The gesture used to belong to me. Not ownership. Memory. That night, when Dad came downstairs, I asked, "Did Julian know?" Dad did not answer. I asked again, "Did he know the book was mine?" He laughed. "Maya, he negotiated the deal." My body went cold. That was worse than Chloe. Chloe had always wanted what I had. Julian had read every page. He knew which scenes came from journals under my bed. He knew my voice, my sentence rhythm, the exact line he once called devastating. Then he sold it under my sister's name. The book became a phenomenon. Number 1. Translations. Film option. Interviews. Chloe's face everywhere. My parents upgraded the house security, not to protect her, to keep me in. They told the world I had gone abroad after an emotional breakdown. Julian circulated private messages suggesting I'd always struggled with jealousy. He used my disappearance as proof that Chloe's childhood had been complicated. I became a character in my own stolen book, the jealous sister, unnamed, unstable, convenient. At first, they did not ask me to write. They assumed the manuscript had enough unused material for publicity. Then the publisher wanted a sequel. Chloe panicked. One afternoon, she came into the basement wearing sunglasses. "The contract requires another book." I stared. "So write one." She flinched. "Don't. You're the genius. Mayor, tell them you need time. They gave us 6 months. Then start typing." A face hardened. "This affects all of us." I laughed. "Not me." She looked around the basement. "Actually, yes. That was the first time I understood they did not intend to release me after the first book. I was an asset now. The sequel contract was enormous. My parents needed me. Julian needed me. Chloe needed me. Need is dangerous when people do not respect personhood. I started planning escape. The chain was not always attached. During supervised shower visits upstairs, Dad used restraints around my wrists instead. I watched locks, schedules, camera angles. One night, my mother forgot to fully latch the basement door. I waited. No footsteps. I climbed the stairs, barefoot, heart racing. The house looked unchanged. That felt obscene. Family photos, flowers, a bowl of lemons on the kitchen counter. My life had ended beneath a house that still smelled like vanilla candles. I found my old journals in Dad's office, stacked inside a box with evidence. I took them. Ben went for the front door. 3 locks. I opened the first, second. Before the third turned, Dad grabbed my hair. I screamed. The journals fell. He dragged me backward. Mum came running. Chloe behind her. Julian appeared at the top of the stairs. I saw him. "Hugh, May!" He froze. My father threw me to the floor. I crawled toward Julian. "Please." By Piloptown, there's sharp no confusion. This calculation. Then he said, "Don't make this worse." My whole body went still. Worse. For who? Dad caught my hands as I tried to crawl. What happened next was fast, brutal, and medically serious. I will not describe it in detail. What matters is that my wrists were badly injured. Intentional. Enough that I could not type. Enough that surgery would later be necessary. Enough that the message was clear. You can leave this room only as useful material. I woke on the basement mattress with both hands immobilized. My mother sat beside me. She had cleaned the floor. That detail haunts me. She cleaned. Not called police. Not called an ambulance. Immediately. Cleaned. A private doctor eventually came and stabilized me. No hospital. Eventually came and stabilized me. No hospital. No questions. My father paid cash. When the doctor left, Mum placed a digital recorder on the table. The sequel is due in 6 months. I stared. She pressed record. You don't need hands to tell a story. I looked at her. For the first time in my life, I stopped seeing my mother. Not because motherhood disappears with one crime, because the word stopped explaining what she was willing to do. She said, "Start." I closed my eyes. Then I spoke. Not the book they expected. Not really. The first chapter sounded exactly like Chloe's bestseller voice. Because it was mine, I gave them pain. Beauty, memory, lines the publisher would love. And beneath every page, I began building a second book. A message. The trick was not magic. It did not depend on me perfectly predicting every printed page from dictation alone. That would have been too fragile. Instead, I built markers into section openings and worked with the page proofs they occasionally brought downstairs for approval because Chloe could not answer editorial questions. They thought I was correcting punctuation. I was placing letters, one by one, page by page. The controlled pattern. Not a puzzle readers would notice casually. A structure someone looking for it could verify. Scrollu is a frey heddle. I am held hostage. Check the basement camera. The first time I realized the camera could save me, I almost laughed. My parents monitored me through an internet-connected security system. They thought surveillance meant control. Sometimes evidence is just abuse with a timestamp. I needed someone outside to see it. The smart television became my only chance. It had a browser, limited, top-down, but connected. One night, after Mom left the remote on a shelf, I used the end of a broom to knock it down. It took 20 minutes. My hands barely worked. I managed to open a public digital rights support page, not the dark web, not a secret criminy forum, a non-profit resource I had once seen in an article about journalists. There was an emergency contact form. Typing was nearly impossible. I used the accessibility keyboard and slow movements with one finger. My message was short. My name is Meidahel. I'm ein Feng, held in my punets Beesman. My sister stole in my book. Camera above me. Please, every fee before contacting family. I sent it. Then deleted the browser history as best I could. No response came for 2 days. I thought it had failed. Then the television displayed a routine software notification, system message message, receive. My parents ignored it. Inside the notification queue was a line, we see you, do not change behavior, help is being coordinated. I stared until my eyes blurred. That was Adrian Cross. Cypher came later as a nickname from journalists. He hated it. He was a cybersecurity investigator working with a legal aid group that specialized in digital coercion and stalking. He did not hack the house. The retrieved publicly reachable technical records, contacted counsel, and coordinated with police after verifying my identity through publisher files, missing person discrepancies, and device registrations. The basement camera became central once law enforcement obtained the proper authority. Until then, he told me one thing: stay alive. It sounds simple. It was work. I dictated every day. My mother sat upstairs timing chapters. Dad complained about word count. Chloe sent editorial notes. Julian sent worse. The publisher loves the trauma sections. Push harder there. I read that note and nearly threw the recorder. My trauma. Their market research. I kept going. The sequel became better than the first. That mattered to me more than it should have. Part of me wanted to write badly. Punish them with a weak book. But writing was the one place they could not own me unless I let them define the work. So I wrote the best thing I had ever written. The book was about captivity without naming captivity. About a woman living in a house with doors that only opened from one side. About family members who confused love with ownership. About a voice buried beneath somebody else's name. Editors called it haunting. They had no idea. The page-proof process became my evidence channel. Adrian and my attorney coordinated with one editor inside the publishing house after the legal team was brought in under confidentiality. Her name was Ruth Calder, 58, editorial director. The first time she read my raw dictation metadata beside the published text, she cried and got angry. I liked her immediately. She helped preserve the page structure without alerting Chloe, not by secretly rewriting preserve, by ensuring the final layout did not accidentally destroy the marker pattern. The publisher's lawyers faced an ugly truth. They had not intentionally stolen my work, but they had profited from it. They had relied too heavily on documents supplied by Julian, signatures, to copyright registrations, identity attestations. They began a quiet internal investigation. They did not cancel the launch. That was deliberate. Police needed the family to remain predictable. The publisher needed a public correction. I needed the world to see where the words came from. Chloe went on tour. I watched clips in the basement. She quoted my lines. Readers cried. At one event, someone asked, "How do you write pain so honestly?" Chloe smiled. I live it first. I laughed until my wrists hurt. Julian appeared beside her at almost every event. One night, Adrian sent my attorney copies of emails obtained through legal discovery. Julian to Chloe, Maya would never let me control the rights. Chloe, so, Julian, you will. Another, as long as she stays downstairs, the books keep coming. Another, your parents were right. We should have handled this before the first contract. I read the emails slowly. The hidden truth was worse than cheating. Julian had found my original notes before the drug dinner. He had known. He also suggests that keeping me physically isolated would protect the asset. Bad phrase, asset. I sat on a mattress instead of the wall. Once, I had been planning a wedding with that man, and I had chosen flowers. We had argued about table sizes. He'd kissed my forehead while reading the first chapter. People do not become monsters in one visible moment. Sometimes they reveal that the empathy you love was only technique. The sequel printing began. Millions of copies. The message was inside them. Not obvious enough to trigger the family. Clear enough that once highlighted, nobody could dismiss it as coincidence. Police prepared rescue warrants. The publisher prepared the launch evidence package. Adrian prepared the livestream mirror in coordination with the venue platform and legal team. Again, no illegal team. Again, no illegal takeover. No magical code. The event's own presentation system would display the evidence because the publisher authorized it. Chloe believed she owned the stage. She never understood contracts. That was part of the problem. The night before launch, Mum came downstairs. She wore a new dress. Tomorrow is huge. I looked at her. For who? She ignored it. For who? She ignored it. The royalty payment clears at midnight. Congratulations. She frowned. Don't be sarcastic. I wasn't. That seemed to bother her more. She studied me. You've changed. I almost smiled. Have I? You're too calm. I looked at the camera above us. No point fighting. She relaxed. Abusers love surrender. It makes them careless. She stepped closer. After the launch, maybe we can prove things. My stomach turned. What things? Your room. I laughed. You mean the basement? She looked offended. You're safe here. There are phrases that become disgusting after enough misuse. Safe. Family. Love. Protection. I said, okay. She smiled. That was the last time she believed me. Launch day arrived. Police unit staged nearby. Ruth was at the venue. Adrian was with digital forensics. My attorney was in an unmarked car outside the house. I sat beneath the camera, waited. At 8:03 p.m., Chloe walked on stage. The audience cheered. At 8,007, she lifted the book. At 8,010, they lifted the book. But at 8,022, the first red letter appeared. C then HOO. My parents were upstairs watching the broadcast. I heard my father shout, "What the hell?" My mother ran toward the basement. The door opened. She looked at the television, then at me. What did you do? I said nothing. She reached for the camera switch. Too late. The feed was being preserved independently. Dad came behind her. His face was purple. Turn it off. I looked at him. You wanted a sequel. He moved toward me. Then the front door exploded with sound. Not literally. Police ran, shouting. Dad froze. Mum's face went white. I heard officers entering. My father looked at me. "You did this." I smiled. "No." I touched the manuscript beside me. "I wrote it." Police came down the stairs. The first officer saw the chain, then my hands. His face changed. He moved quickly. "Mom, we're getting you out," my mother screamed. "She's lying." The officer looked at the camera, the recorder, the chain, then at her. "Step back." Dad tried to push past. He was restrained. My mother kept talking, explaining, reframing, blaming. Nobody cared. An EMT knelt beside me. "Can you stand?" I tried. My legs shook. "I think." He offered his arm. I tried. My legs shook. "I think." He offered his arm. I took it carefully. The chain was unlocked. For 3 years, metal had decided how far I could move. Then it didn't. I stood. Pain shot through my wrists. I didn't care. I climbed the stairs. The house looked smaller. The bowl of lemons was gone. Different curtains. Same hallway. Police everywhere. My mother in handcuffs. Dad in handcuffs. The television still showing the launch. On screen, Chloe was crying. Not beautiful tears now. Real panic. Julian stood beside her shouting at publisher security. The live feed showed me reaching the top of the stairs. 3 million people watched. I looked directly at the nearest camera, then said, "My name is Maya Hale." At the venue, the audience went silent. I wrote the books. That sentence ended the public lie. The legal consequences took much longer. Chloe was detained that night after investigators presented evidence tied to fraud, conspiracy, and my confinement. Julian too. The publisher froze royalty accounts. My parents' house became a crime scene. The basement was photographed from every angle. The recorder contained months of dictation. Not only my voice. There's, "Mum, keep talking." "Dad, no food until the chapter is finished." "Julian, the launch needs stronger trauma material." "Chloe, can she make me sound less selfish in the mother section?" That one became famous later. I wish it hadn't. People turn parts of my captivity into memes. The internet does not know how to leave suffering solemn. My attorney filed notices, takedown requests, privacy demands. Some platforms listened, some didn't. I learned quickly that public vindication is not privacy. It is a different kind of exposure. The hospital removed my hand braces the next morning. A surgeon examined the old injuries. "We can improve function." "How much?" He did not promise. "Good. Enough that writing by hand may be possible again," I cried. Not because handwriting is necessary. I could dictate forever if I had to. I cried because my father had tried to make a decision about what my body would never do again. He did not get the final word. Surgery 1, then therapy, then surgery 2. Finger movement, grip, pain, more therapy. The first word I wrote by hand after years of dictation was not Maya, not freedom, not Chloe. It was again. My therapist laughed. "Why that? Because you're going to make me do it again." She did. The publisher's internal investigation found multiple failures. Julian had supplied forged assignments, false author attestations, manipulated identity documents. Some staff had questioned inconsistencies. No one escalated hard enough. Ruth testified about that. "We wanted the book to be real," she said. That sentence mattered. Wanting something to be true can become its own bias. The publisher settled, publicly corrected both books. My name returned. Chloe's removed from primary authorship. The original first edition remained evidence of what happened. Millions of copies existed with the wrong name. I could not erase that. I stopped trying. Copyright ownership returned to me through litigation and settlement. Royalties were redirected. Back payments, film rights, foreign rights. An amount of money I had once believed would change my life. It did. Just not the way I expected. Money after captivity feels strange. I bought a small apartment first, not a penthouse. A quiet place with sunlight. The first night I slept on the couch because the bedroom door bothered me. I left every interior door open for months. Julian's defense was the ugliest. He said he had been manipulated by my parents, then by Chloe, then by money, then by stress. Emails disagreed. He had proposed the management structure. He had known about the basement. He had helped coordinate contracts. He had advised my father to prevent outside medical care after my hand injuries because hospital records could create questions. That one ended, whatever private ambiguity remained. At trial, the prosecutor showed one email. "Julian, if Maya is going to stay useful, stop treating this like family and start treating it like production." I stared at the screen. Production? I stared at the screen. Production? I had almost married a man who thought human beings became easier once renamed as business functions. The jury noticed too. Chloe testified. She cried. She said she had always lived under pressure to perform. True. She said our parents controlled her. Partly true. She said Julian pushed her into taking my book. True in part. Then the prosecutor asked, at any point during the 3 years Miss Hale was held in the basement, did you know she was there? Chloe said nothing. Yes or no? Yes. Did you call police? No. Did you tell the publisher? No. Did you tell the publisher? No. Did you continue promoting the books? She cried harder. Yes. Accountability is often less dramatic than revenge, a sequence of yeses. My parents faced kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, assault-related offences, fraud, and conspiracy charges. Julian and Chloe faced their own overlapping charges. The sentences were serious, long, not mythic. Not because the public wanted 30 years exactly, because what they did was documented across years. The publisher did not go to prison. It changed. That mattered to me. They created an independent authorship verification process for high-risk memoir projects. Writers could register source notebooks and drafts confidentially. Management companies could not control author identity verification alone. Editors received training on coercion signs. The changes were boring. Good. Boring rules might prevent another basement. My hands improved, not perfectly. I touched slowly. Dictation remains faster. For the first year after release, I hated microphones. Then I realized I was giving my family too much territory. I bought a recorder, my own, no camera, no one listening. I sat beside the window, pressed record. Chapter 1, nothing came. I stopped. Tried again the next day. Tried again the next day. Chapter 1, still nothing. For 3 years, writing had been labor under threats. Creativity did not return because a judge restored copyright. My brain had learned that pages meant danger. So I stopped trying to write a novel. I wrote grocery lists, letters, the reviews of terrible restaurants, one paragraph about rain, a scene with no plot. The first thing that felt like mine again was a page about a woman buying oranges. No trauma, no family, no basement, just oranges. I cried after writing it. Adrian Cross became a friend. Not Cypher, never Cypher. Journalists gave him that name because they needed a character. He hated it. I'm a digital investigator. Too boring. Correct. Cypher sounds better. It sounds like I own 3 hoodies and live in a server rack. I laughed. He helped me build something new. Not a hacker charity. A legal and digital support network for creators whose work had been stolen through coercion, fraud, intimate partnerships, family control, or false representation. We called it First Draft. Writers registered evidence privately. Timestamp drafts, voice notes, notebook scans, contract histories. Not blockchain magic, not unbreakable technology, just better records, better access to attorneys, better pathways when authorship became dangerous. Ruth joined the board after retiring from publishing. She said, I owe the profession penance. I said governance is less dramatic. She joined anyway. 1 year after the trials, I visited my mother. I thought I needed closure. I was wrong, but the visit still mattered. She sat behind glass, older, hair grey. She picked up the phone. Mayor, I did not say Mom, she noticed. I read the new edition. I stared. Mummy, I read the new edition. I stared. By book? She nodded. Your book. The correction almost hurt. Why? I wanted to understand. I laughed softly. You had 3 years. Her eyes filled. I know. Silence. Then she said, Chloe was always easier. I frowned. What? She wanted things we understood. Fame. Yes. Money. She nodded. Pain. Yes. Money. She nodded. Attention. Another nod. And me? Mom looked at me. You wanted truth. I said nothing. That was harder. I almost put the phone down. Harder, as if truth had been an unreasonable personality trait. She continued. We kept thinking if you would just cooperate, everybody could survive. Everybody except me. She closed her eyes. Yes. The honesty was new, too late, still real. I said you did not break my hands because I was difficult. She looked at me. You broke them because my hands made me independent. Tears fell. I know. You locked me downstairs because my voice made money. I know. You called it family because saying slavery would have sounded bad. She flinched. I let the silence stay. Then she whispered, I am sorry. I believed she meant it. That did not mean forgiveness arrived. People confuse sincerity with repair. Sincerity is only sincerity. I stood. She pressed her hand to the glass. Maya, I looked at her. I hope you become someone who understands what you did. Then I left. My father wrote letters. I returned them unopened. Julian wrote once. I burned his, not symbolically. I needed to start a fireplace, and there was a paper. Chloe wrote many times. I read one. She said, I don't know who I am without your book. That sentence made me sit still. Then I realized it was the first honest thing she had ever written. She had built an identity from my pain. When it disappeared, she had nothing. I did not respond. Identity is work. She could begin. I would not do it for her. Before I published anything new, I went through one more battle that nobody had warned me about. My name. Legally, I was still Maya Hale. Professionally, the world knew Chloe Hale. Readers associated our surname with a stolen memoir before they associated it with me. My attorney asked whether I wanted a pen name. No, are you sure? Wes, it might create cleaner branding. I laughed. Cleaner for Hif. Cleaner for who? She smiled. Fair, I kept Hale. Not because I wanted the family connection, because they had already taken enough. I would not surrender a name simply because they had dirtied it. The first corrected edition of The Quiet Room arrived at my apartment in a plain cardboard box. No cameras, no publisher executives. Plymouth that, just me and a package cutter. I opened it slowly. The cover was almost identical to the old one, same title, different author, meet Meher Hale. I touched the letters, then stopped. My hand shook. Not from pain, from something harder to name. For years I had imagined this moment as triumph. It felt more like grief. The wrong cover had existed first. Millions of copies. Millions of people had read my life through Chloe's face. A corrected edition could not unprint the lie. Ruth came over that evening. She saw the book on the table. How does it feel? Weird. Good weird? No. Bad weird? No. Bad weird? No. She waited. I said, it feels late. Ruth sat across from me. Corrections usually are. I looked at the cover. Then what's the point? She thought for a moment. The record. That earns her stayed. Not erasure. Record. The old editions would always exist. So would the new ones. So would the court findings, the raw dictation, the journals, the camera footage. Reality did not need to destroy every lie. It only needed somewhere durable to stand. That idea became central to First Draft later, not promising creators that stolen work could always be perfectly recovered. Sometimes it couldn't. Sometimes contracts were gone. Companies dissolved. Platforms vanished. Memory failed. The evidence could still create a record, and a record can change what happens next. I signed the first corrected copy with my own hand. Slowly. The signature looked uneven. My wrist hurt halfway through. I finished anyway. Then I wrote beneath it. Original author restored. Ruth read it. That's dramatic. I've earned one line. Fair. I kept that copy. Not behind glass, on a shelf, a normal shelf, between a mystery novel and a cookbook I never used. That was the point. My authorship did not need a shrine. It needed a life. The first book I published after release was not a sequel. It was essays, short, controlled, title, own name, no dramatic cover, no photograph of my hands, no basement image. The publisher wanted my face. I said no. They wanted the chain as a symbol. Absolutely not. Summer Captivity was not branding. The book opened with, the first thing stolen from a writer is rarely the sentence. Usually, it is permission to say, this is mine. I wrote about authorship, family, coercion, the strange cruelty of becoming famous for surviving someone else's theft of your fame. The book sold well. Not as well as The Quiet Room, good. I did not want my life to become a machine that required new trauma to stay profitable. I taught workshops, quiet ones, no arenas, no giant screens. Young writers brought pages. I read them slowly. Sometimes someone apologized. It's rough. I would say, it's yours. That mattered. Years worse. That mattered. Years later, I returned to the house. Not for closure. The property had been sold. A new family. The basement was renovated into a playroom. I knew because a magazine article about the criminal case mentioned it. I drove past. Children's bicycles near the garage. Chalk on the sidewalk. Normal. I did not stop. Buildings do not deserve lifelong ownership over memory. At first draft, one case changed me. A songwriter named Lena came in with a contract signed by her boyfriend manager. He had registered dozens of songs under a company he controlled. No basement, no physical captivity, just financial coercion. She kept saying, but he never hit me, as if violence were the only permission to call something abuse. I looked at her drafts, her voice memos, dates, emails, then said, "You do not need bruises for your work to belong to you." She cried. We connected her with counsel. She recovered part of her catalogue. Not all. Real life rarely returns every stolen thing, but enough. Afterward, Adrian said, "You finally built the boring version." "What? You're acrostic." I laughed. "What does that mean?" "You used to hide proof inside pages." He pointed at the first draft system. "Now you give people somewhere to store it before they need to hide." I stared. He was right. The acrostic had saved my voice once. Infrastructure could save my voice once. And infrastructure could save more. That became my direction. Not revenge, prevention. Still, people loved the Lodge story. Every anniversary kept resurfaced. The red letters, Chloe dropping the book, my face on the screen, police entering the basement. Some viewers called it the greatest literary revenge ever broadcast. I hated that phrase. Then accepted I could not control every headline. What I could control was the ending I told. The global launch did not free me. It exposed the truth. Freedom came slower. Physical therapy. Courtrooms. Unlocked doors. Writing one page no one had ordered. Learning to say my family's names without hearing the basement lock. Choosing not to marry Julian after fantasy strangers online. Insisted I should find a better man immediately. No, romance was not compensation. I dated years later, slowly, poorly, normally. That felt radical. My hands never returned to exactly what they were. I have reduced grip strength in the right, pain in the left when weather changes. I use speech to text for long drafts. Some readers call that poetic. It isn't. It is accessibility. I refuse to make injury beautiful just because I survived it. The scars are evidence, nothing more. The money from the original books became large. Tens of millions after rights, settlements, translations, screen licenses. I invested carefully. Funded first draft. Bought an apartment with large windows. Not a penthouse at first. Years later, yes, I like views. That is allowed. One evening I stood on the balcony while the city glowed below. A new manuscript sat inside. Not memoir. Fiction. A mystery about a woman who restores old clocks. No kidnapping. No family fraud. No stolen identity. No family fraud. No stolen identity. Just clocks. Adrian came over for dinner. He picked up the first page. I looked at him. For 1 second the old fear moved through me. Someone reading. Someone taking. Someone changing the name. Then I nodded. Yes, he read, smiled. This is good. I laughed. Careful. What? That's how the last disaster started. He put the page down immediately. Terrible. Hated. I laughed harder. That sound felt like proof, not of victory, of ordinary life. My family once believed breaking my hands would end my authorship. Then they discovered authorship had never lived in my fingers. It lived in attention, memory, structure, choice, the ability to decide which story was mine to tell. They stole my manuscript. They stole my name from the cover. They stole 3 years. They injured my body. They sold my pain through my sister's face. But they made one mistake. They needed me to keep writing, and every sentence they forced from me became another chance to leave a door open. The acrostic was only one door. The recorder was another. The camera, another. Ruth, Adrian, and my attorney. Police. All doors. That is the part revenge stories often get wrong. One genius plan did not save me. A chain of people did. People who checked. People who believed evidence. People who stopped treating my family as the default owner of my voice. At the end of every first draft workshop, I ask one question. Whose name goes on the page? The room usually laughs. They think the answer is obvious. Sometimes obvious things need infrastructure. Sometimes they need witnesses. Sometimes they need a woman in a basement hiding 3 words across hundreds of pages. Chiloe is afraid if. I am held hostage. Check the camera. Those words ended one lie. The life afterward taught me something better. I did not need to spend the rest of my career hiding messages. I could write openly, under my own name, with my own contracts, in rooms where doors opened from both sides. The first manuscript after captivity ended with a simple line. The clock began again. I wrote it by hand, slowly, painfully. Still mine. I looked at the words for a long time, then signed the page, Maya Hale. No alias, no sister, no manager, no family permission, just my name. And for the first time in years, that was enough.